This is Food for Thought with Deborah Walker. Today on Food for Thought, I have Barry Tanner, who has come to talk to me about the Advertising Standards Agency and the impacts it's actually having on the natural health industry and how it's affecting natural health practitioners. Now, Barry has got, he's definitely an acknowledged expert in his field. And as a former project manager for the NHS, he's been a lecturer, teacher, examiner, university external verifier, professions rep, parliamentarian. He participates in regulatory groups. So I'm really, really pleased to have him with me today. He's actually a project manager currently for the General Regulatory Council for Complementary Medicine. Welcome, Barry. How are you?
Thank you. Very well indeed. Good to be here.
And give my audience a little bit more about your background than I've just done. Do you want to just go into a bit more detail?
Sure. Started off as a compliance officer with the City of London Stock Exchange. So a really early introduction to rules, regulation, and how those are applied in appropriate terms and to appropriate capacities. Spent my later life working in recruitment and looking again at employment law, negotiation, so on and so forth, health and safety regulation, and again the application of appropriate regulation in an appropriate manner. I became involved in complementary medicine about 25 years ago, rising through the ranks, as it were, studying a range of complementary therapy disciplines to become a teacher, to then become an assessor and a verifier, working with examination boards, working with the development of the federal regulatory process for complementary medicine, which came out of the work from the Prince's Foundation for Integrated Health, and again leading to the formation of the General Regulatory Council for Complementary Therapies. So at this moment in time, that regulates in the voluntary sector approximately 16,000 practitioners in around 14 or 15 different complementary therapy disciplines. So again, we're seeing the experience of dealing with governmental bodies, private providers, NHS providers, right the way across the board in the application of a regulatory approach.
And today is very much about appropriate regulation in an appropriate manner, because we're going to talk about the fact that in March 2011, the Advertising Standards Agency in the UK effectively changed their remit to include the internet and therefore online advertising. It updated its code of advertising practice, didn't it, and started to enforce the health claims regulation. Now, since then, they've clearly had complementary health practitioners in their sites. Is this me just being a little bit paranoid, Barry, or do you think that this has actually been happening?
The evidence we're seeing at GRCCT is that it's definitely happening. The announcement in March of 2011 that the ASA was to extend their own remit to cover the internet led to a sort of a plethora of starting individual complaints from not particular sectors, but just from complementary therapists in general, asking questions about what the Advertising Standards Authority was. And they'd been receiving some really quite robust communications. So in November 2011, we issued an advisory release, effectively just simply stating some of what the ASA is and what it isn't. Since that release, however, it appears that the ASA is moving through a targeted range of complementary practitioners. We know that they've focused on homeopathy, they've gone through reflexology, and they're now directing their sites, we understand, to acupuncture. Interestingly, I think it would be a good idea to look at what the Advertising Standards Authority actually is, and then we can see the outcomes of their actions and what they're trying to do. I think the first thing is to consider is that the Advertising Standards Authority it's not an authority. It's not a governmental body. It is a private. It's a PLC. It's a limited company. It is not elected or enforced. It is not overseen by a government body, and it's the only recourse that it has in terms of enforcing its desire for individuals to do as it asks, is to refer them to the Office of Fair Trading or the Trading Standards. However, Trading Standards have also confirmed that they have no authority or oversight of the Advertising Standards Authority. Yes, it does sound a little puzzling, doesn't it? However, what this doesn't stop the Advertising Standards Authority from writing to individuals and indeed to organisations in very robust and sometimes quite complex terms, terms which appear to imply that there is a level of authority. So we see things coming out where they refer to the application of sanction. So obviously when one sees a letter coming from the authority and referring to efficacy claims or compliance action required, and then says there could be sanctions. The end result of these sanctions could be legal action in the court. It could be placement upon a list of these, the ASA's own list defining those who breach their own laws. The statements that say things like, given the self-regulatory system, it's recognised by the government, the Office of Fair Trading and the courts as one of the established means for regulating misleading ads in non-broadcast communications, including online, blah, 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 blah. Now, it is recognised as one of the established means. It's not the established means, and that's a very, very important definition. So in terms of authority, the ASA has as much authority to refer an individual for sanction at the Office of Fair Trading, i.e. under the law of the land, as you do or I do or any one of your listeners.
And it does basically portray itself in its language to be like a government agency. This is the thing.
Well, this is where the clarity has really become an issue. The ASA constantly refers to itself as the UK's independent regulator of advertising across all media. Yeah, the use of the language within its emails, on its website, and in its written communication to practitioners, certainly what we're seeing in the complementary therapy sector, does imply that it holds a level of authority, which it does not. It is self-appointed, self-regulating, industry-funded, and we should perhaps talk a little bit about that. It's an industry-funded body, so it's acting as a prosecutor, a judge, a jury, and essentially possibly an enforcer without any form of authority at all. Let's talk a bit about how it's funded, because that's an interesting concept. It is funded by a voluntary levy on advertising. Mm-hmm. So you and I, the CAM practitioner, hasn't subscribed, hasn't committed to, hasn't agreed to any of the terms or requirements of the ASA. We've never signed up to anything. But the levy is voluntarily paid by those who place advertising. Now, interestingly, there is no way to ascertain who pays it. It is paid into a third-party pot, and the ASA withdraw from that pot to fund their services. Not really a very appropriate practice for a body deeming itself the independent regulator. So again, another contradiction in term of action. Not really appropriate.
Well, there are many organisations in the CAM sector who are challenging that bias, because you've got Freedom for Health, you've got CAM themselves, you've got the homeopathy group H.MC2. I have no idea how you actually say that, I have to say, so sorry guys about that. But who had a ruling against them? But it's a ruling from from a limited company who, as you say, do not declare who they're funded by. So how can that be unbiased? And the homeopathy people showed that the decisions were potentially being swayed by the Nightingale collaboration, who most obviously were initiating many of the complaints against the sector in 2011, and the ASA were most obviously being swayed by that side of things.
Let's pick up on a couple of those points there. I mean, I think probably one of the best sources of information around the ASA and the process as it affects the complementary healthcare sector is Freedom for Health. So the website for them is www.freedom and then the number 4 health.com. They've got some very good links through with template responses and some very clear instruction as to what is appropriate and what isn't. The website you were referring to with the homeopaths is hmc21.org.
21.
Okay. Again, a really good descriptor on there about how they actually move through the process to go through the ASA's complaint against them and submit evidence to validate within the terms of the CAP guidelines, which is the Committee for Advertising Practice, or the practice arm of the ASA. And again, we have two sides of this argument. The first is that the ASA doesn't have any authority, and the second is that if you acknowledge a level authority or simply want to appease or justify the appropriate use of claims for efficacy on the website, then we need to look at how that judicial process works. How are they looking at the evidence? Who's looking at the evidence? Is the complainant and the defendant being given appropriate options and time to respond, claim and counterclaim? In our current legal system in the UK, which would probably be what most judgment type processes would be based upon, there is presentation of case and then cross-examination and then summary. Within the ASA's process, there is no such thing. There is complaint submission, which is when the defendant, for want of a better word, places forward their argument in support, and then the ASA decide. So they decide what evidence they want to look at. There is no opportunity to cross-examine. They decide who looks at it, and there is a considerable argument about who has appropriate qualification.
Well, Robert Valkirk has most publicly spoken out about that approach in regards to whether they were competent to evaluate CAM evidence, because he, in discussion with one of their leads, with the CAM lead, was saying that they clearly stated that they had no scientific expertise outside of a pharmacist when they were actually dealing with their homeopaths, and then other evidence that's been submitted, they haven't had any. So he's been very critical of them.
Well, let's put this into context. Within the regulatory process of CAM practitioners, the practitioner disciplines, each of these therapy groups, have gone to a great deal of effort to develop standardized documents to ensure that they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. They have definitions of the therapy, they have core curricula, they have standards of proficiency, requirements for continuing professional development. And within all of those, supported by their professional associations, are the basis that you operate on the law of the land in accordance with those requirements for the presentation of what you do and how you do it. Now, the ASA are not the enforcement of the law of the land. And again, if they are going to come forward in some sort of voluntary capacity, then the very least that they should be seen to be doing is to put forward the expert opinion with the knowledge to judge the submission and to be very clear about who the expert is, and for that expert to be cross-examined. If one appears in a court of law making a particular claim, and we see it regularly in orthodox medicine, there is a stream of professional witness to convince either side for or against the argument, and the validity of those professional witness often make up a considerable part of the examination process. None of this exists in ASA. It's really a bit of a sort of hodgepodge put together, and it's very confusing for both the public and the practitioner.
And it's totally untransparent.
Well, again, excuse me, and the transparency is one of the key factors. If we're basing it on a lot of the material which comes through from ASA has a very legal type implication, a legal bent. Now, if you're looking at it as a regulatory body, then one needs to be seen to be squeaky clean, to be transparent, to be examinatable, and none of this exists. So we're sort of looking into a black hole and saying, right, okay, well, you do your thing, and then come back and tell me what you'd like me to do, but come back and tell me without any form of authority, and without any form of evidence, without any form of transparent judicial process. And then to top the cherry on the cake, you don't have any authority to tell me to do it anyway.
And that's the crux of the matter here, isn't it?
It sounds like a joke. If we were saying, hey guys, look, the bakers have decided that they're going to regulate what the electricians advertise, and they're not going to tell you who's doing it, and they're not going to tell you exactly how the process works, but they're going to claim that if you don't do it, they can somehow stop you by going to some legal authority. The electricians would say, look, mate, shove off. It's nothing to do with you. And I think what the Freedom for Health website has done very effectively is to put on a set of templates, and the templates effectively say, thank you very much, but I don't want to play your game. I'm not under your authority. I haven't committed to you. Please go away. And if you keep hassling me, this could be harassment. Now, interestingly, normal businesses, in the normal practice of their business, if you get a letter that says, look, I don't want to play, stop doing this, stop writing to me, stop communicating with me, you are harassing me, they would stop. Not the ASA. They again have their own standard template, which comes back saying, we are, as the independent government and advertising codes are underpinned. Sorry, let me start again. The ASA is independent of government, and advertising codes are underpinned by consumer protection legislation and reflect UK and EU law, which this is reflected in our code. Yeah. Well, that's fine. I could say that. I've got my own code. Here you go, guys. I'll tell you what to do. Not only is it coming back in the face of a very clear and legal statement saying don't bother me anymore, but it's actually coming back in quite a threatening process. So the important factor is that, or the important factors here are that your listeners understand whether they are engaging with the ASA as a professional association, whether they're engaging with the ASA as an individual practitioner. The requirements for them are that they obey the law of the land. The requirement is not that they obey any instruction from the Advertising Standards Authority. If they are engaging with the Advertising Standards Authority as a member of the public, so if they are looking at the Advertising Standards Authority, looking at their list of adjudications and seeing an individual's name there, the member of the public needs to understand that that is just the choice of the ASA. It is not a government position. It is not a health authority position. It's not even the position of the senior regulatory bodies in complementary medicine. So we need to really get that message out in clear terms. Don't be fooled. Don't be bullied. Don't be taken over.
And it's sad that we're using terms like bullying, because fundamentally their letters are intimidating, and it's been commented on by a number of different groups how intimidating the approach actually is, and it feels very anti-cam orientated. They feel it's certain groups have said it's akin to a witch hunt against cam practitioners with the language that they're using, and it's meant to be balanced and independent in their assessments and clear in their adjudication, and it's genuinely not. And it feels like they can come along and close your practice down with how they position themselves.
Doesn't it just? Yes, it certainly does. It comes. I love things where it says, if advertisers fail to comply with the CAP code, then the compliance team will have to consider applying sanctions against this practitioner. I'd view that as threatening.
Yes, and what could those sanctions potentially be?
Well, they are horrendous. They could be listed on the ASA's website.
And this is the thing, isn't it? Because that's the only place they're meant to publish their decisions, isn't it? On their own website.
In theory. They could also, in theory, apply to the internet service provider, hosting a paid advert which then links to a website page for a non-compliant practitioner. I'd love to see that one put into practice. They could refer them to the Office of Fair Trading. Unfortunately for the Advertising Standards Authority, the OFT isn't interested. Unlike the ASA, which pick up on individual complaints, the OFT only really acts in terms of trends or significant breach. So there has yet to date been no prosecution of which we are aware by the OFT for any of the CAM referrals from the ASA. So essentially it comes down to the fact that if you don't do what we say, the totality of these sanctions will be that we'll ask somebody else to do something about it. We'll ask the proper authority to do something about it, and it will be their decision to act or not. We'll ask possibly your internet service provider, and again I would underline the word ask, the internet service provider, if those terms of evidence could be proved, and worst thing of worst, we will put you up on our website, which is rapidly going downhill as a source of valid information. Sorry to sound flippant, but the whole process from we are receiving communications from practitioners who have been in business or providing voluntary services for many, many years, who are receiving this type of communication from ASA and are considering closing their practice because they feel so intimidated and they feel so bullied, and it's very important that clear, concise information is given to both the public, and to the practitioners to say you do not need to do this.
Now, it really does feel that the ASA are actually working under a wider remit than they genuinely have, isn't it? And with the whole threatening side of their language. Well, we move then from the side of fact into conjecture. Okay, so what we can say is that yes, a large majority of the complaints to ASA come from a single source. Or are instigated by a single source. We can say that there is evidence to suggest that there is particular focus on each different sector of CAM, or each different discipline, whether it be homeopathy or reflexology or aromatherapy, and there would appear to be a plan to work through all sectors. It is disturbing and it is of concern that a body where funding is untraceable is accepting repeated and regular complaint from a particular source or a narrow selection of sources, and it is concerning that those actions are then could be interpreted to inhibit the practice of complementary therapy practitioners.
Yes, so it's concerning, but I say that as a member of the public and as a UK taxpayer, yeah, it is concerning. If I was to suddenly jump up and start saying to you, look, I'm not going to tell you who's paying me, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what I'm going to judge you on, but I'm going to write to you and tell you that I'm going to put you up for failing to agree or to take everything off your website or whatever code I choose, you'd be very cross. In fact, you'd be looking to the agency to complain to for this. Now, interestingly, because the ASA is not overseen by any government body and it has no government authority, there effectively is nobody to complain to. With, and I hasten to add, with the exception of the normal process which we do in a democratic society, which is to complain to your MP, and ask why this process is going on. And again, on the Freedom for Health website, there are a range of template letters which can give you a start in that process and move the matter forward.
The watchdog has no teeth, really, does it?
Well, no, but the watchdog has no teeth at all. However, that doesn't stop it being very scary. Yes. The bark, to follow your analogy, the bark that is coming off these letters and these emails is a very loud bark, and it's a very scary bark. And it's very important that practitioners and the public realise that the dog has no teeth.
Now, and you on the Freedom for Health website, they've actually outlined the Children's Food Campaign study that which was called Through the Looking Glass, and where they actually discussed the bias of marketing regulation and how it seems to be setting its own rules. They actually asked what could possibly be behind industry watchdog that attempts to prohibit natural health methods and also fails to protect children from junk food promotion. What could be the vested interest link behind that? I thought that was a really interesting question, and very, very interesting that they actually posed that, because this seems to me it's not just about natural health practitioners, but the wider field of natural health in general that seems to be under target a little bit from these guys, or a lot from these guys.
Well, I think the problem comes back to this idea of like how the funding is and the transparency. If you have a body which is not transparent in who's paying its bill, then one can draw all sorts of conjecture from where it goes. So if it appears to be attacking one sector of the community, or if it appears to be particularly robust or verbose in that action and for those sectors, then the obvious implication is that whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And there is a lot of advertising done by the food industry. There's a lot of advertising done by the pharmaceuticals industry. The bottom line is we simply don't know. But it does look dodgy if you're not going to tell people who's paying you.
Are the ASA, by doing this, effectively restricting freedom of health choice?
That's a very good argument for that. The beauty of living in the society in which we do is that we have an orthodox medical approach which is there to act in emergency and support us and take care of us as members of this society, and we all support and are grateful for that process. But the nature of living in a democracy means that we also have the right to choose, and we have the right to choose natural approaches, alternative approaches, or complementary approaches to our health and our lifestyle choices. If we have a government body which we elect and put in position with appropriate authority to guide us, and we have these in various sectors, food standards, we have them in financial services, etc., and a vast range of them in statutory medical care. Then we accept those. They are an authority. Where we have a body which does not have the authority, but is barking very loudly without a clear paymaster, then it is a natural process to assume that some individuals would be threatened, would be inhibited, would go out of business, would stop practicing, would change the way they practice. And yes, the ultimate outcome of that would be that the options available to the consumer would be limited. So yeah, that could be an outcome. I think on the more positive side, the process doesn't seem to be particularly effective. The word is getting out there. More and more people are receiving the facts to make informed decisions. Sites like the Freedom for Health one are giving very clear instruction as to how to do that. So I don't think the ASA is actually having as much effect, or as much effect as it would certainly like to, but is having much effect at all, really. It's very quickly being regarded within the CAM sector as a bit of a nuisance that's really making an awful lot of noise and not being very productive. Most of the individuals, the vast majority of individuals, certainly to my experience, that are in this sector are in the sector because they enjoy what they do. They feel, they believe in what they do. The vast majority of practitioners are very professional, very well qualified, very knowledgeable on their subject, and don't operate in a dangerous manner and don't make inappropriate claim for efficacy. So I don't think there is much danger there. If there was perceived risk to the public, then CAM sector would have been placed forward for statutory regulation, as is orthodox medicine. The House of Lords reports to the Science and Technologies Committee in the early 2000s divided complementary medicine up into three sectors. The sectors for which there was a perceived danger to the public, and they were moved forward towards statutory regulation. The sectors where most of the therapies that we're now talking about, most of the natural and complementary therapies, came into Sector 2 of the report, where the Lords agreed that there was limited perceived danger to the public, and certainly not from the application of the therapy. And it was appropriate for the professions to come together in a voluntary regulatory process. That's what they did under GRCCT. That's what they've got. Part of that regulatory process says, obey the law of the land. Evidence that you're obeying the law of the land. So there's no perceived danger. If the government had perceived there to be a danger, then we'd be looking at statutory regulation and certainly moving it forward. ASA are taking their own perception of a danger, an own perception of what one can claim, and interpreting the law. They don't have the authority to do that.
And it's basically preventing many people, as you say, from practicing potentially in the future. And I've got a point in front of me here, which is it almost a violation of free trade practice with the way they're trying to impose conditions?
Well, no, it's not a practice of free trade because they haven't got any authority.
Well, this is it.
They can say and shout and bluster, and this comes back. I'm sorry, I sound like a really stuck record, and I keep coming back to the same point, but it's very, very important here. The ASA have exactly the same authority as you or I. We can say, hello, OFT, trading standards, we think this individual this advert is wrong. Yeah. It's up to the appropriate authority to decide an action. It's not up to you, I, or the ASA to say what should or should not happen. We have an opinion. We're entitled to that. But they're not an authority. So, no, they're not actually restricting. However, if this message is not clearly and accurately got out to practitioners and got out to the members of the general public, that the ASA does not have the support of these practitioners, it does not have conveyed authority from them by engagement or involvement, because there has been no engagement by the ASA prior to this their assumption of this remit. There's no reason why their claims as to who's good and who's bad should be taken any more seriously than my claim or your claim or Mr. Joe Public's claim.
Has any other sector actually had the same issues as we have, as the CAM practitioners have?
I can't answer that question for you, I'm afraid.
I was just wondering.
My knowledge is specific to the CAM sector.
Yeah.
I can certainly say that for a disproportionate, out of something like 16,000 practitioners that come currently on the GRCCT register, since 2011, we have had communication with around 212 individuals who have received some form of complaint. Now, that communication may be as simple as an email saying, giving them a copy of the advisory release and stating what the ASA's authority is, right the way through to prior to the arrival of the Freedom for Health templates, to circulation of templates or advice on what are their legal requirements. But if you put that into context of the number of practitioners in the UK and the number of practitioners that are GRCCT registrants and the number of letters of complaint and communications of complaint which the ASA have been sending out since April 2011, what we're really seeing is they're not having a lot of effect. Because, yes, we do have significant individual practitioners who have perhaps not had the best advice and have either tried to counterclaim against their judgment, or who have decided, I really don't want the hassle, I perceive this to be some sort of government body or authoritative body, and I'll just stop doing what I'm doing. But those, apart from those groups, there's a relatively small number of complaints. So I think the Freedom for Health work and the HMC 21 work and work by lead bodies such as ourselves is slowly getting the message out there, and I think at this moment in time it is really incumbent on the ASA to either stop, period, just hold your hands up and say, look, I'm really sorry, we shouldn't have gone there, we're not going to do it anymore, or at the very least engage with the regulatory bodies, engage with the professional associations and develop a code which is appropriate. And I feel that if such a code could be developed, the professional attitude of the natural care practitioners and CAM practitioners could provide another viable and appropriate method of reassurance for the public. But let's stop this rubbish of sending out letters that are very cleverly worded but mean absolutely nothing.
They also need to have expertise, actually, that can deal with the evidence that's provided for them. So if they do challenge our advertising then or marketing, in effect, they need to have the people in place that can actually truly look at it with an unbiased eye, surely.
The professional expertise. If you're going to have someone that's going to consider evidence submitted as to what is appropriate research, then the minimum requirement is that the individual should understand in depth the research and the methodology of various different research approaches. Again, because we're not being told who's looking at it, the qualification of the assessor or the expert witness, for want of a better word, cannot be validated. Second side of the argument. First side don't have authority. Second side, if you're going to do it and claim authority, which can be conveyed by enough support from a voluntary sector, we see it in how we regulate complementary medicine. If you've got enough people supporting it, it's as good as statutory regulation. But the only way you can do that is to be transparent. Who pays the bill? Who looks at the work? Can it be cross-examined? Is the process transparent? You've got to tick these boxes. Yes,
because the homeopaths, in their appeal, when they complained about the ASA's investigative process, they actually cited that there was a refusal to read evidence, there was a misrepresentation of evidence, and they acted way beyond their level of competence.
Well, again, the decision by the ASA really set themselves up for this sort of response, and I think that the homeopaths have a very good and solid argument. Yeah. If you are going to say that something does not comply, then you need to be able to evidence the reason why, and you need to be able to show who, how, where, why, and when the evidence was examined. To simply say thank you very much, but we don't like that bit of the evidence, so we're not going to consider it. I mean, it's like a child's playground, for goodness sake. This is you can't have a body claiming to be an authority, claiming to be a regulator, and then say, well, actually, we don't like that bit, so we're not going to do it. You know.
I have to say that the homeopaths, the HM21.org. If you go to their website, people go to their website and have a look at their response to the ASA. It is absolutely brilliant. I have to say, they did make some alterations to what they were doing, but fundamentally, and this is my opinion, they absolutely wiped the floor with the ASA, and I think they were absolutely in their rights to do it. So please go and have a look at that website. Now, the other
that's
website...
that's HMC21.org. I think you said HC21. I do apologise. Go on.
That's okay. Now, it's because I'm full of a cold. So I'm not quite as clear as I would normally be today. A bit foggy, guys. I do. And I'm going to line them up in a bit and massage and all those nice things. Get my echinacea going. Yes, definitely, absolutely. Now, where was that before I got sidetracked? Yeah, now there's if you want to find out more information about what to do, you've got Alliance for Natural Health who are being, you've got Robert Valcare out there who's being very vocal on their website and about the ASA at the moment. Yep. And you've also got Freedom for Health. And you've been talking about that website, and you obviously know that website in depth. Barry, do you want to just say a bit more about the content that's on that website?
Yes, very nice and clear and straightforward. We're using it as a referral tool for practitioners to seek information. Freedom and then the number 4 and then the word health.com. Now that'll give you a bit of background about the ASA itself. It'll also give you some pretty good examples on things like the homeopaths and the junk foods and so on and so forth. But again, very clear and concise. Most importantly, from our perspective, it will also give you links to the appropriate acts, the roles of the different departments, and template letters to contact your MP or to respond to the ASA. Very simple to click, download, fill in, off it goes. And you can use that. It's all free of charge. You can use it. Or if you're a CAM practitioner, you can come to GRCCT.org as the regulatory body, and we can advise you in more depth on specific instance, and we'd be happy to fulfill that role. And as we've talked about on several bits and occasions, HMC21.org. Again, something in a bit more depth, and the Freedom for Health website links through to HMC and to several other case studies. But some, as you've said, the depth of some of the responses and the clarity. It is, to my mind, speaking personally, it is appalling that someone like this and the homeopaths have to spend so much time, so much effort, and so much expense to assemble this type of defence against something which isn't required. Doesn't have authority.
And that's a really good point, actually, about the expense, because it isn't cheap to start to have to defend yourself and then deal with these letters.
Well, indeed. I mean, by the time one starts talking about defences with legal action and involving solicitors and so on and so forth, the costs run into thousands, quite literally and quite quickly. And as many of your listeners will know, CAM practitioners in general don't make very much money. And to have a defence launched is a significant part of the budget. However, with the information that's available on the websites that we're talking about here, and with services such as yourselves and other media providers, we are getting the message out to practitioners. Don't worry about it. Don't stop what you're doing. don't accept the instruction, and hey presto, guys, if they put you on their website saying you've been really, really naughty and not done as they've told you, well, there's two courses of action. One is you just completely ignore them, like most people are doing, or secondly, if you perceive or if you have evidence that by appearing on the ASA's website it has a detrimental effect on your business, then one would be quite within their rights to pursue an action against the ASA for recovery of that loss.
Really interesting point, Barry.
Yes. Like many of the actions that are referred to by the ASA, that hasn't been tested yet either.
Okay, well, I'm sure that if more people are targeted, and you said that they are about to target more people, then let's hope that they've been listening to this, and if those people are placed on the website, that some of them do actually pursue that avenue.
I think MPs contact primary source. The government is there to reflect the views of the public, and where it impacts on how many practitioners conduct their business and the availability of their services to the general population, then it's time that government acted to stop this authority, this body claiming to be an authority.
This is the second interview today I've done, which is it's almost, there's a level of fear behind what we're doing nowadays, and because of the intimidating approach that's happening from different authorities. And this is the second interview that I've had, which has almost got that as an underlying thing that's happening to CAM at the moment. So, so thank you very much, Barry, for coming on and actually giving us a level of knowledge about how to actually resolve and move ourselves forward through this
quagmire.
Indeed, that's a very good way of putting it. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. It's very nice to talk to you.